Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Some Spoiled, covering Hot D, Season 1, Episode 7, Driftmark. In this episode, we have the funeral, in which people get pretty much as messy as folks tend to get at funerals, so I've heard through the grapevine. And a little shit steals a dragon from his own... You know what I'm trying to say. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm RoShawn.
Okay. So, out of the gate, I just want everybody to know that RoShawn and I felt more positively towards this episode than the last episode. So that's good. What were your feelings overall? Like, what have you come away with this time?
I enjoyed this episode a lot more than I did the previous one. I was disgusted at Eamon getting the dragon. I know it had to happen, and I get it, whatever. But I really was disgusted by it, and the fact that we got that like 3 to 5 minutes of him and Vhagar was just like a slap in the face to what was stolen from us when it comes to Laena. And then the insult of the fact that he did hijack this dragon from this little girl the night of her mother's funeral, But yeah, I liked the episode a lot. I'm very it made, I'm starting to get sad. I don't know why. Because we are barreling to what is going to be the beginning of the end of this great house. Mm-hmm. And the closer we get to that disintegration, I find myself getting a little sad, because I know, this world with dragons is coming to an end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the episode.
So we start off at the funeral, which I honestly wasn't expecting, and I don't know why. I think it's just because Laena has been given so little shrift.
Yeah. That
I didn't think we were going to be spending time at a funeral for her, because the show just wouldn't bother with it, I guess. Mm-hmm. And they are committing her to the sea in a ceremony that I'm pretty sure this was mentioned by Austin Arminio, and he was talking about like sort of perhaps links with the traditions of the Ironborn, because of their whole thing with the drowned god. But because she died by fire, the fact that she was then buried at sea was surprising to me. It just felt so incongruous. And there's this weird moment where I think it's her uncle that's like doing the eulogy, or
Vayman. And he is going on and on and on about how strong the blood is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is as she sets to sea for her final voyage, the Lady Laena leaves 2 true-born daughters on the shore. I'm trying to find this moment. Though their mother will not return from her voyage. Oh my God, it's taking so long to get from one line to another. They will all remain bound together in blood. And we get a little close up here on Otto, who, as you had predicted, has returned his hand and is studiously polishing up his little hand pin. And this dude looks straight at, it seems, Rhaenyra, and says there is salt in Valerian blood. Ours runs thick.
Ours runs true. Yeah, he's looking dead in her fucking face.
And ours must never thin. And he says it, and Damon laughs. And nobody else seems to either like understand why he's laughing, or it's just a weird moment where he's the only one that's sort of acknowledging what this guy said, and everybody's acting like it's really mysterious. And I'm like, y'all know what he meant when he was saying this.
I took it the opposite. I feel like everybody completely understands what's being said here. And
so the fact that Damon laughs is like insulting.
Okay, we're talking about two different things. So the thing about Damon laughing, I actually didn't really, I don't know, that rubbed me the wrong way.
Okay.
I have him, like, I get that Damon is laughing at Vayman's very thinly veiled accusations, but I didn't appreciate them having Damon laugh in this moment, because the show has decided, and they do it later on in the episode when Rhaenyra asks him point blank about his marriage. They did it in the last episode. The show has decided, it seems like, to really downplay the marriage that Damon had with Laena.
Yeah.
The show seems to have made a decision to have him seem distant or estranged from his children, and I don't know if it's because, I don't know why the show made those choices, but, and also this is in Austin's comment as well, the show completely did away with how close Rhaenyra and Laena were.
Yeah. Yep.
So it feels to me, the show, and when you open the episode and you say you were surprised that we spent this much time at the funeral, because they really were shortchanging Laena in a lot of ways. Having him laugh in that moment felt like another way the show was being like, all of this is happening. You don't have to take it that seriously. It's not that important. And using this moment of her funeral to give us another indication of, I guess, how shitty Damon is supposed to be and how he doesn't have feelings or whatever. I don't know. I didn't think it was necessary to have him react like that. I think it was very clear that every person standing there was super uncomfortable by what Vaymon was saying, and that it was incredibly awkward and tense. And I think it could have stood on its own in that moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of what they're doing with characterization is puzzling to me. And even last week off mic, you and I were talking about a lot of the stuff that they have decided to spend time on versus the stuff that they've sort of like either only explained in dialogue or shown very barely, and it doesn't really have much effect because we aren't given time to spend with the characters. And it like, there is just a weird pacing issue with this show. I keep thinking back to the second episode, or whatever the one was, the hunting, and it, like, so little really happened in that episode, and we could have cut a lot of it in favor of developing some of these other characters more. And there's been a lot of people who have read the books talking about how the things that we're not spending a lot of time on don't ultimately matter that much to like the main plot that's coming up, and so that's why we're not spending time with it. But that isn't like approaching it as, well, I know what's coming and so we don't need to do this, isn't a way to write a show. If your audience who is not familiar with the original work is kind of thinking we're going to be delving into certain characters more because you set them up to be interesting, and then you just don't deliver on that at all, I think that's kind of a poorly done.
Yeah.
You know, like I fully thought we were going to be spending a lot more time with everybody before we got to some of the key moments. It seems like we're now like rushing to headlong. And that was the part that I was sort of excited for, because I was going to get to find out a little bit more about who these people really are as people. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I still don't know who a lot of these people really are as people.
My the way I approached this episode after, the fucking debacle that was last week's was sort of tempering my expectations. And I think I was actively running into this wall because people were making choices that I quite frankly just thought were idiotic choices and didn't understand. And it was just, but then I had a talk with myself, and I started to think that, like, I was expecting these characters to be, masterminds and high level strategic thinkers, and having this long game plan and all this stuff. And when I stopped and said, this is just some really messy family shit. This is just mess. This is, even though, like, it's taking place on a political stage and, there's real power and there's real danger involved. Ultimately, this is a family that is bitter and resentful of each other. And they're not, these great thinkers that are like, that has this long game plan and that they're setting all the pieces, on the board in the right place. That's not what's really happening here. And once I kind of came around to that, I was able to enjoy just sort of like the mess of it, because this episode was hella messy. And I for one, at the end of it, felt very much like, oh, Viserys is just trying to fucking hang on to the strings of this deteriorating family, trying to like weave it together, and is failing at every turn because no one else is as motivated to keep this family together as Viserys is, because he's the one that's carrying the burden of this prophecy,
Yeah.
And that just helped me to enjoy the episode much more, even though I still hate these kids.
Oh my God. Yeah. Agreed. So we cut to the actual like gathering afterwards, and it's sort of mostly taking place on this like outdoor patio. Is like the wrong word. It almost is like a rooftop, but it's not that either. I don't know what to call it, but they're outside, and Rhaenyra comes out and she's getting this look from Alicent that I didn't really understand. She's like glaring at her already, and I'm just like, what did she even do? She literally just came outside. Would you relax?
There's a scene, this whole, wherever they are, this like roof or whatever, this whole scene is spectacular. There's very little dialogue, but it's like you're seeing close-ups of everyone, and there's all this tension. Daemon is leaning somewhere staring. You have the moment with Alicent and Rhaenyra. There's a real close-up on Alicent's face. There's the kids sort of around. Everybody is here for this sad occasion, and you would think they would be comforting each other or trying to offer each other comfort, but everyone is just so awkward.
Yeah.
There's a moment where I think Rhaenyra is like thinking she's about to speak to Rhaenys, and Rhaenys just gives her the Heisman. Like, she doesn't even talk to her. Which I'm low-key like, well, I understand that Rhaenys is in deep grieving right now, but also it felt like, is there... what's going on there with Rhaenys and Rhaenyra? And then we have another moment with, oh my God, fucking Larys staring at Alicent so much to the point that Christian is like, this guy won't stop staring at you. Do we have a problem?
Okay, you're jumping ahead a little bit, because first I wanted to talk about how Rhaenyra goes to her son and is like, why don't you go and comfort your cousins? And he's like, well, my dad just died. And I was just like, really? You're just gonna, wow, okay. He's decided that he's just going to fucking like, he doesn't say it, but he's saying it. He's like, we should be at Harrenhal grieving for them. And then she does, the Valerians are our kin and the Strongs are not. Look at me. Do you understand? And he doesn't nod. He doesn't respond. He just walks away. And it's a real like, if your own children are out here just sort of saying these things, you are losing your battle, kiddo. Like, that's not a good place to be. They need to be as defensive of themselves as possible. But
I mean, well, we see that immediately come into play.
Yeah, it's just like in this moment, I was like, if anybody was standing near them and heard them, and she looks around like, oh my God, did somebody? And when she looks up and sees that Allison was watching, you can see that she's sort of worried that Allison may have heard some of it.
Mm-hmm. I like when he does go over, though, and he ends up grabbing one of the little girl's hands. Oh, no, she grabs his hand. I'm sorry. And there's a moment where he's looking, and it's almost like he's a little surprised. And
he seems almost suspicious.
Like he's just like, wait, what is she doing?
Yeah.
But then sort of like understands immediately, and then like ends up like standing next to her, which I thought was really sweet. I hope that as they grow, and they're going to be raised as siblings. We know at the end of this episode, even though they are technically God, I guess. I'm not sure what they are.
Yeah, I don't want to get into all that.
Like Rhaenyra is their, let's see, Daemon is their father, and Daemon is Rhaenyra's uncle. So Rhaenyra and the girls are cousins.
Right.
Because their fathers are brothers. But then Rhaenyra's kid, that's when it gets a little tricky.
No. And we also have another little moment here because Daemon is like standing off, and eventually Viserys comes over and is asking him like, can't we just put everything aside? And Daemon essentially is like, no, fuck you, I don't need you. And I was really surprised that he was so vitriolic, because I don't know what he's getting from all of this that he's so mad at Viserys for still.
Yeah, there's just a lot of empty space. The 10 years that they've been gone, we know that Daemon and Laena both kept up a good relationship with Rhaenyra. But I don't know who else they stayed in. Like, and it sounds like she maintained a close relationship with Laena. But I don't know what that means for the rest of like court and Viserys.
Yeah.
And also Corlys and Rhaenys. Like, I don't know, were they supportive of this union with their daughter and Daemon? Did they, you know what I mean? Did they sneak off? Was this marriage, what do you call it? Was this marriage approved of by the king, or did they just, you know what I mean? I don't know. And they don't tell us any of that. So I'm not really sure. So when Daemon is so standoffish, when Viserys is so clearly wanting to just move on, put the grievances of the past behind us and move on, and Daemon is just like, yeah, I would really rather not. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know where that's coming from. Daemon, especially because Viserys is trying to connect with him on a very emotional level, because he has also lost a wife in childbirth, so here comes Viserys like, yeah, I know better than most what you're feeling right now. And I don't know, why is Daemon so mad?
I don't know. He offers to find him a place at court, and that seems to only make him more angry. And I don't know if it's like, you're trying to like do me a favor.
Yeah, I'm sure people are listening and they're like, Daemon is salty because he doesn't want and doesn't need charity.
Yeah, I guess.
But I think that that's a real basic sort of interpretation. I feel like, and maybe I'm not saying it's not true, but it just feels basic to me. He doesn't want charity. I feel like it needs to be more than just that. But I'm not sure what more there is.
Yeah.
Because when last we saw Viserys and Daemon together, Daemon was the person who had done Viserys wrong. So I'm not sure why Daemon is holding a grudge at this point.
Yeah. We also have this moment with Helena.
Yeah, I am paying much more close attention to what she is mumbling about.
So she's got a spider she's like playing with over here in the corner, and she's saying, spool of green, spool of black, dragons of flesh, weaving dragons of thread, hand turns loom, spool of green. I don't know about that.
I mean, it's not as apparent as the last one, right?
Right.
But
it comes in a minute, but she just says, like, he has to get a dragon, but to have it, he'll have to close one eye. Something like that.
So, I mean, this is, I think, and I could be wrong, but other than that moment at the engagement party where Harlan was like, you know what color do they light the lamp or whatever, right? This is the first time in show we've heard both green and black, right? So maybe it's just as simple as she is talking about this rift that's coming between the greens and the blacks, you know? And then it's going to be like a sort of a war of dragons.
And we have a moment with her brothers who
Aegon is drunk this whole episode.
He's drunk.
Got a cup in his hand every time we see him, and I, for one, am not mad about it.
And his brother Aemond is just basically like, yeah, so you have nothing in common with her. Who fucking cares? It's your job to marry her. And Aegon's like, well, then you marry her. And he's like, I would. If I was supposed to marry her, I'd fucking marry her. I would do what I'm told. Stop being such a little baby about it.
He is absolutely inheriting his mother's sort of sense of doing your duty, and you don't cry about it. And the fact that you are willing to do it and meet your obligations actually makes you superior, you know?
Right.
So it's funny to see Aegon be, because, you know, he's the firstborn and he's the one that everybody's talking about should be king. And like, the more we get to know him, the more you're just like, oh no,
definitely not.
This would be terrible.
Very bad king
in
making. Yes.
But you see his little brother kind of desperate and willing to fill those shoes if only he had the opportunity. Right. I don't think he would make a very good king either, quite frankly.
No.
But he definitely seems like he would lean into that role as opposed to Aegon, who just doesn't seem particularly interested in none of this.
Yeah, that's really the thing, is that he doesn't really wanna. He's just like, can't I just drink and like fuck?
Yeah, can I just be rich and drink and bang? Like, and quite frankly, I ask the same question every time I wake up too. So
and the thing is too, like, you could. There are plenty of kings who have just done that, but it would also be very bad. So yeah, the two of them are just sort of sniping at each other. If only mother had only betrothed us, it would strengthen the family and keep our blood pure. To which he says, she's an idiot. It's just like, God damn. And he goes up to one of the maids and takes a drink from her in such a way that some folks have mentioned that they think he has been harassing the maids.
Oh, he's been trying to fuck everything and everybody that walks around. I 100% believe that.
Agreed. We both fancy creatures with very long legs. All right. Then
calm down,
wench.
Calm down, sir.
Here, let's see. Weaving dragons of thread. Oh my god! And she puts the spider into a little shell and like clamps her hand down on it. I'm like, what is it that you're even doing, ma'am? So yeah, this is the moment where you get Lionel Strong. And honestly, guys, I just want to say, that's the one. He sucks, and I mean that as a character. I am just not into this dude. He is too over the top. We didn't even like actually talk about it in the episode last week, but the whole "what are children but a weakness?"
Oh yeah, we talked about it afterwards. Yeah,
was really. I mean, the whole chaos is a ladder was already a really bad monologue, and one that is frequently made fun of for good reason. And it just felt like a repeat of that. Like they were trying to do something that felt very like profound and villainous, but wasn't either one.
Yeah, when you actually think about what he said, like, he didn't really say anything, though.
Exactly.
I mean, like, there was this really dramatic music playing, But
and he is talking to Allison, being like, I'm sure you'll find a way to repay me when the time is right, as he plucks a flower out of a fucking vase sitting next to him. Like, it's just all so goofy. So him standing here and just fucking staring at her, what am I supposed to think this mastermind is doing here?
This is so bad, and I don't know if I'm giving the show, I feel like I might be giving the show more credit than it deserves, but he's so obvious, and then we have Kristen pointing it out, so that later on at the end of the episode, when Allison has that moment with Laris, and he's offering, basically he's like, if you want an eye, I can get you an eye. But she tells him that one of the things that she needs and appreciates is discretion. And I feel like that was her being like, you are being entirely too obvious, sir. Yes. I need you to calm the fuck down and stop giving me secret, furtive looks across the crowded room. Calm the fuck down. God. So I hope that the next time we see him, this cartoonish,
toning it the fuck down
this cartoonish level of villainy that he's rocking is minimized.
And I just really I don't know. It's fine. All right, I'm going to move on from this. The one thing that I want to say too is, last episode, Sir Kristen basically is talking to Harwin Strong and says that thing about, it's surprising how invested you are in their training. Usually that only happens if you're related to the kids somehow. And it feels to me like he should have gotten some trouble, because allegedly accusing the queen of I guess infidelity is just even beyond just having bastards, but even just infidelity is punishable by treason.
Well, it's supposed to be, but
obviously that rule does not apply to him.
It doesn't.
No rules apply to him, I guess.
Yeah, and also I'm not sure in that scene in the yard with Harwin how much we as the audience are supposed to understand the other people on the scene are hearing. Am I watching this scene and I'm supposed to understand that really Kristen and Harwin are speaking in such a way that only they really are hearing the remarks, right? But if that's the case, then it kind of makes Kristen's whole master plan of getting Harwin to overreact moot, because you need people to hear the insult or the accusation so that they know what Harwin is, air quotes, overreacting to. But if that's what really happened, then your point about, well, I guess you could just walk around and say whatever the fuck and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure the show knows
what they just want the rule to apply when it needs to apply. And it's really frustrating because, the king literally asks Lionel, say what you're trying to say. And Lionel won't even risk saying it here because he knows how dangerous it is to say. But Kristen's out here just shooting his mouth off, and it's totally overlooked. And it's just so many moments of him now getting to do whatever he wants that he feels like as much of a vehicle as Laris does in terms of the show just wanting people to do things that it's just
I also think it's funny, and I don't know if this is an intention or not, but what the show has inadvertently done with Kristen is made him not so different from Rhaenyra.
Yes, exactly.
In the sense that these are yours, your responsibilities and your duty as a sworn knight, et cetera, et cetera. But yet he's out here getting away with literal murder, and his biggest complaint about Rhaenyra is how she doesn't have to follow the rules, he's supposed to be aligned with Allison in that same way. But sir, you also seem to be able to, tread that fine line between actually following the rule and doing whatever the fuck you want with no consequence.
So indeed. So then we go to this moment where fucking Laenor is out in the water, just up to his waist and just standing there sort of gazing out to where his sister was buried, I guess. And this causes his father to go up to Carl, I think is his name, pretty angrily and be like, get him the fuck up out of there. What are you doing? Because this guy is just chilling up here drinking while Laena makes a fool out of himself, according to his dad.
Yeah.
I don't think he's making a fool out of himself exactly. I think he's just very, very sad, and that's fine. And I appreciate anybody looking actually sad instead of all of the people here who seem to not give a shit about what they're here for, except for the children. But all right, fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very specific things that Corliss expects from his kid, clearly. So.
Yeah. And again, you know, it required me to fill in like a lot of blanks to make that scene make sense. And, you know, and sort of like come up with reasons why Corliss would be so upset. And the best that I could come up with was that it's not dignified, you know, to like, you know, the funeral, you know, it's a joke, but it's also kind of real too, you know, where people throw themselves on a casket, you know, and fall out and pass out and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Even though it's not nearly that dramatic, wading waist deep into the water where the coffin has just been submerged is a little like throwing yourself on the casket. And it is like undignified. And I think that there are so many indignities that Valerians have suffered in these years, you know, the indignity of having your son be king consort, but everybody knows that those aren't his kids.
Yeah.
Even though Corliss seems to be engaged in the same type of denial that Viserys has been, when he has that conversation with his wife towards the end of the episode, you know, it becomes very clear that, look, we all know, right? So the indignity of having his son be queer, his son not be able to have children, you know, his son's wife having bastards, his daughter has run off and has been living, you know, away from her family's ancestral home and, you know, living in this foreign land. And I still don't know how he felt about Daemon. So in that marriage, so it just felt very much like Corliss has just been like, y'all are sullying our fucking name. Like you are making our name a mockery and you're letting these, I'm projecting a little bit here, but it feels a little like Corliss is like, and we are just like simps for Targaryens, you know, and it's enough. I have had enough of you all making like, you know, making us appear weak. And yeah, but again, like that's 100% me writing fan fiction.
I have to think that he would have approved of Daemon because he kind of goes to Daemon, you know, a few episodes ago and is basically like, we're very similar people. And I know that I can depend on you to get involved with the stepstones and everything since, you know, Viserys won't do shit. But I don't know that. I just kind of assume that.
So it's not talked about it. It's not talked about in the book, like how Daemon and Laena ended up together. And
it's talked about how they ended up together. It's not really about how Corliss felt about it. I don't recall. I remember that she was supposed to be getting married to like this one particular guy, and Daemon basically just shows up and mocks the man so furiously to his face that he has no choice but to engage him in a duel, and he is slaughtered. And that is how Daemon frees her up to marry him.
Oh.
But that's all. That's the only thing that I really remember about that, not whether Corliss was like down for it or not. And then we have the moment where Viserys is going to go to bed and he calls Alicent Emma.
He sure does, in front of God and everybody.
And
poor Harold is just like, do you want me to escort the queen, Alicent?
Oh my God. And Viserys, I think, realizes that he made that mistake.
I don't think he cares.
But he does not seem to give any shits. I don't think there's anything between him and her anymore. Like, there's just no respect or affection of any kind. And, you know, what are you going to do? So this is when we get into The Long Night Part 2, which is...
I rewatched it today in the living room and I fucked with my settings so I could actually see everything that I missed. So I'm glad I did, because I had missed a fucking lot.
Yep, same. I'm over here. I have it on my computer screen, which is always slightly better than my television in terms of like the rear brightness that I can get on it. And when I watch this on my television, I have adjusted my TV as best I can, because I was covering a while back the Hill House series and the other one I can't remember, but by the same director, Netflix series.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both filmed really, really dark because they're horror, and I couldn't see it very easily, so I had to recalibrate. And even then it was kind of hard, so I started to only watch on my computer, that way I wouldn't miss anything. And I made the mistake of, I didn't watch this the night it came out. I watched it the next afternoon when it was daylight. And let me tell you all, there was a fucking 15 minutes where I could not see a damn thing. I mean, nothing. And there are a lot of people out there saying, oh, I saw it fine. Okay, congratulations. I don't fucking care if you saw it fine. If enough people had this issue that it became a topic everyone was talking about, they fucked up. And everyone trying to act like, well, you should have known how to calibrate. My shit was calibrated. And I don't think I should need to buy a new television to watch one episode of a fucking HBO show. I'm sorry. I'm not really like...
Did you see the tweet from HBO? Did you post it, or did I see it somewhere else?
I saw it, but I didn't post it.
They were basically like, yeah, we know that you all couldn't see it, but we did it on purpose.
It was an artistic choice.
I don't know what else to tell you.
And what I have seen since then... there was a comment that was left on the post I made joking about how I could not see anything. And it was an article about the whole thing being so dark. And it turns out, first of all, this was all filmed during daylight. Mm-hmm. So they were doing that day for night thing where they slap a filter over it because it's easier to film in daylight and then just do this, which I really understand in principle. But there are ways to do that so that it's visible. And we have a lot of examples of other movies and TV shows doing that successfully. They just didn't seem to care or like take a look at what it would be like for anyone who wasn't perfectly calibrated. I just don't, even if you could calibrate your TV to see more clearly, again, if everybody is required to completely recalibrate to see, that is not well done. I'm sorry. It's just not. Especially when the calibration like makes it so that, okay, I can basically see it now. Not like, okay, there it is. It's not even great. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah. By the time I was done, that shit like it was in daylight. But
yeah.
I can't do it on my computer though, so we're about to go to those scenes, and I'm not going to be able to see anything for 20 minutes.
It was Alex Brown, so just want to give him a shout out. Thank you, Alex, for sharing this. It's an article from Vulture, just titled "Why Did This Week's House of the Dragon Look So Bad?" And they were talking about the day for night thing, and also in the background of several scenes, there's safety fencing, which they're theorizing was part of what they were trying to cover up by making it so dark. And I'm just sort of like, maybe, but I would think they'd be able to just edit that out more easily than just cover it up here. And the article points out several scenes in which people are clearly like squinting into the sun, and I couldn't see well enough to tell they were squinting into the sun, so I guess that's fine. But truly, this was directed by the same director that did The Long Night, which was the other one everyone complained was too dark. I don't understand why they just let this guy do the same thing again. Like, genuinely, there are just some folks who are really prepared to defend everything this show does, and I don't get it. They don't love you. It's a I hope she sees this, bro, kind of response from me, to be honest. Like, if you want to jump on HBO's dick, I guess go have fun, but you're wrong. It's fine. So the whole thing starts with Egan being drunk as fuck, and I didn't get that it was him drunk, so I just see Otto like getting very angry and coming up to somebody and literally kicking them. And I finally figured it was Egan because his hair was bright enough to see, and I knew his brother sure wasn't going to be the one acting like this. But yeah, Otto is disgusted. He yanks him up by the fucking lapels, and when he does, Aegon says brother. And I was like, yo, how tall do you think he has grown in the last half hour, sir?
I wonder if Otto is eventually going to see how worthless Aegon is and have him like have an accident so that Aemon can be next in line. Because Otto's he's 100% disgusted with Aegon, like as an entire person. It seems like at this point.
So then we have Carl like helping Laenor up the stairs and his father glaring at him, and Laenor sort of shoves Carl off him because he realizes like some of what his dad is mad about, and he just stomps off by himself. But it's like it's a real weird moment because his sort of drunk grief acting I don't think is real good. So he's just doing this weird stiff walk that I was like, I'm not really sure what I'm meant to be getting from that, but drunk isn't what I'm getting. And then we see Aemond looking up at the sky, and he sees a shadow. Again, did not see the shadow, had no idea why he was looking up at the sky, why he was like coming around to the other side and sort of sneaking away from everybody. I wasn't getting any of what was supposed to be going on here. So the camera is sweeping out over the water. And again, as I'm saying this, I'm watching it happening on the screen in front of me that I can finally see with my computer now. So I'm describing all of this, and it's basically me seeing it for the first time as I say it all. So I just want to make that clear. This is when we have the conversation with Corlys and Rhaenys. And Rhaenys is sort of trying to blame Daemon for Laena's death, saying that she wanted to come home and he wouldn't let her. She needed our maesters. And Corlys, I think rightfully, is like, you're trying to find somebody to blame for this. It is what it is. This was going to have happened to her if she was here or at home.
Mm-hmm. And
she says maybe the gods have scorned us for our insatiable pride, and gives him a real look.
And by ours, I mean yours.
And he says that crown was yours until they plucked it from your head. Is it such a terrible thing to want to like bring it back? And she says, you know what? My daughter's dead. How about we stop with the fucking lies? And we're knocking it off that you want this for my sake. You were ambitious. You wanted to be married to the queen. It's not about your rage on my behalf. It is about you. Mm-hmm. I gave up on the crown a while back and have not been clawing for it, have not been attached to the idea of somehow regaining my position. That's never been a thing I thought could happen. And you won't let it go. And then says, even now, at the cost of our children. I really didn't get what she meant about that. Even now, at the cost of our children. What does she think he did in this that is like part of the desire for the throne?
Well, that's why I was asking earlier about, unfortunately it doesn't sound like it was fleshed out in the books either, how Corlys felt about this marriage with Daemon, because the way I read this was it feels like Rhaenys is accusing Corlys of sacrificing both kids in pursuit of power. So sacrificing Laena to marry Rhaenyra, even though Rhaenys was kind of against that too. Mm-hmm. And what she said at the time was that this is going to put our son right in the crosshairs. This is dangerous. So I don't know what happened with Laena and Daemon, but it sounds like Rhaenys is saying, and then you let our daughter, marry Daemon because that would somehow make us again closer to the throne. Once Rhaenyra is seated there, we know Daemon is going to be right back. But I don't know Corlys didn't seem like he took that accusation well. Clearly he doesn't feel like, that was fair of her to say.
Yeah.
But And then when we get to the bit where she's talking about leaving Driftmark to the girls,
mm-hmm.
and he does the whole thing about, like, it's not about history, doesn't remember blood, it remembers names.
Right.
So I don't know.
This is something that, so I'm gonna bring something up here, and I don't want to get into the whole thing until later when we have the whole scene with Allison. But there has been a lot of talk about how what Rhaenyra has chosen to do by having bastard boys isn't a big deal in the reality of things, because she is of Targaryen blood. So whether or not their father is actually of the blood is irrelevant, because the kids still have the blood. Whereas if Allison herself had bastard kids, there would not have any Targaryen blood, and that would be the issue. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I mean, I get that technically it's true, but it's not really just about the blood. It's about the appearance of honoring, like, the traditions and vows that you made, and the whole respectability of the situation. And is that fair? No, but that's the reality. And to try and pretend it's only about whether they have Targaryen blood, I don't feel like is being honest about the situation that she's in.
Yeah, I think that that's the real tension of the story, is which is true, which one ends up being the more powerful story to tell. So on one hand, you have people who would say, it only matters if you have the Targaryen blood from one parent, and it doesn't matter who the other parent is, because as long as like Viserys is showing us, as long as you have the power behind you, your version of reality is the reality everyone else is forced to live in. Right. Whether it's accurate or not. So Viserys has created a world where everyone has to be in denial of what seems to be a plain truth. Right. And Viserys has the power to force people to operate under this lie. And then you have the Alicents of the world who see the lie and feel like there shouldn't be any power so great that we all have to pretend a thing isn't a thing. So I mean, in my opinion, I tend to lean towards the Viserys side of this story, even though it's not fair. Because it's about power. And as long as I have the power to say 2 + 2 = 5, until somebody can come and check me and make me admit that 2 + 2 is 4, who's going to do what? You know what I'm saying? And that's really where we are in the story right now is everybody is walking around having to agree that 2 + 2 = 5. And there are some people who just don't have enough power. And I'm assuming that is going to be a yet. They don't have enough power yet to be like, no, actually 2 + 2 is 4. And I get how frustrating that would be for, the Alicents of the world. But I think that if you peel back on that, there's also a real resentment that there's a resentment that power can force people to pretend things are true when they are not. But the only way to beat that power is to amass enough of it on your own. So then what happens when you're the one in power? I feel like that you end up doing the same fucking thing though. Then you get to determine what everybody's reality is and force people to be like, all right, I guess this is what we're doing now. Cause you know what I mean? But anyway.
So this convo between the two of them ends with her just being like, you want to pass this place to kids that aren't even of your blood. Do you see how like embarrassing that is and how much it bums me the fuck out that essentially this line is like ending.
Mm-hmm.
And when she says it and she takes his hand and she's trying to like connect with him here and is saying Lena's kids are like, that's the legacy that we really should be protecting.
Mm-hmm.
He is just like, no, that isn't what people are going to remember.
Yep. And he's right.
I don't agree.
I think he's right. Yeah, I think he's right.
I think that based on what we wind up reading in the recollections of these maesters and the evidence that is like in front of everyone's faces, everybody knows that these kids are not Leonor's kids, and it will be remembered throughout the ages that they were not Leonor's kids, and it's never going to be. But they had they had the Valerian name. Nobody is remembering them that way. They are remembered as Strongs. Everybody knew, everybody talked about it. It was such a major point of contention that it completely overrode what the formality was supposed to be, because nobody was willing to observe it because it was so obvious. So I get what he's trying to say. And maybe if it weren't quite so blatant, if, you know, also Laenor wasn't so obviously not spending time with her and just, you know, with his boyfriends all the time as well, if they were able to come up with some way to make it feel plausible, then maybe what Corliss is saying here would have been true. But
well, see, that's the thing though. You're talking, what Corliss says is, in my opinion, generally correct. For it turns out that for his specific family situation, it didn't work out for him that way. But overall, it usually does work out exactly the way that he's describing, I think. It just so happens that for him, his son happened to be married to a woman who had children that, you know, wildly didn't look like him, as well as he had a son that everybody happened to know was, you know, gay, and had a son who wasn't spending time like by his wife's side and all that, right?
mm-hmm.
So Corliss is operating from what I really think is sort of an understandable truth. And it just so happens that it didn't apply for his children and his family because of all of these other very specific circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure if you looked across, you know, the other, I don't know, families or whatever the fuck in this world, the name really is what is important. You know, the title is the thing. And because the title is the power. And ultimately, it's about power.
I just think that at this point, he should have realized his specific situation wasn't going to work like that. I mean, your brother's telling a eulogy, insulting her to her face practically. You have to know the ship has sailed on trying to like recoup this. It's too late, man.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. When people get to a point where it feels like everything that you threw all your marbles, you know, into one plan and it didn't work out for you, then you have to have a real moment where you're like, all right, do I abandon this plan because I see it's not going the way I had hoped, you know, and do I readjust?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I just go all in because, you know, how do I turn back now? And
yeah,
so Rhaenys,
and that's what she's trying to do.
Yeah, but he has just opted to be like, yeah, no.
And that's what I don't agree with. I just think it's a bad call. I think she was right. Everything today showed him exactly which way the wind is blowing, and he just doesn't want to face it.
I think
she's the savviest one.
It's important to mention that not only does he disagree with her, but he says to her, doing what you suggest is going to inadvertently cast an even greater shadow on the children that are supposed to be, you know, his grandchildren. And Rhaenys is like, well, no, we'll just say, you know, we're honoring our dead daughter, and we'll try to like spin it that way, because even Rhaenys understands that what she's asking Corliss to do is make a very public statement that could definitely be used against them. Because then people could be like, oh, yeah, did you hear about what happened over on Driftmark? Yeah, they're not even giving that boy. Even they know it. They didn't even give it to the son. They're going to give it to, Lena's girls. Because even they know those not their babies.
I just think it was still the better call. I just really, there comes a point where you got to cut your losses. And I appreciate that he doesn't want to throw the kids under the bus. And that's very sweet. And he seems to actually care about them.
Oh, I don't know if I think he cares about them.
Well, it's whatever it is. I just think that they would be casting an even greater shadow. Yeah, they would. Fine. It's done. It's done. It just feels so done to me. Nobody thinks these are his kids. It's done. It's too late.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the other question I have too, is that if it's all done and it's too late, and that and nobody in the realm seems to be buying that these children are legitimate, but they're all being forced to pretend like they are. I don't know how long this story. I mean, I guess it goes on for quite some time. They wrote a whole book about it, but in my mind, it's difficult for me to imagine how this turns into the battle I'm told that it turns into. Because I'm always like, but literally everybody knows those kids are not legitimate though. So what is the big fucking charade? What are we doing? And I'm still super curious to see exactly how that pans out,
I mean, the thing that is the main point of contention is still, should Rhaenyra inherit? And she is heir. She was stated to be heir. Whether her kids are legit or not, she is still the heir, and that shouldn't really be affecting her claim.
Well, yeah, but it absolutely does, because
of course it does.
Yeah,
But I'm saying that the kids, if you're asking how can this thing go the way it does, it's because that's what the fight is really about, is her versus Aegon. That's it.
But their whole point is that she should be disqualified. Well, maybe it's not their whole point. I think my understanding was that they basically, the way to prop up Aegon and support that he should be the heir, despite the fact that he's firstborn son and all that. I get that. But in order to really lift up his claim, and they have to take Rhaenyra down. They have to discredit her. And the best way to discredit her is what she's done here with having these children, having these bastard children, And so that's why I think, even though the kids themselves might not be the thing, they are the way to take her down and to delegitimize her claim to the throne, which is what the Greens need to accomplish, right? They have to get people to support them as the rightful heirs.
Right. Well, I guess we'll see. I just, I really side with Rhaenys on this. I get what he's saying, and if the circumstances weren't what they are, I could understand him holding this hope out. But I just think the time has passed, and everything he saw today should have indicated that, and he's just not wanting to face it.
I think it's wild how similar he is to Viserys when in this way, when it's been presented throughout the series that these men, are supposed to be so different. I don't know how it was in the books, but the show really did set up Corlys as a foil to Viserys, a thorn in his side, a man that was so prideful. That's the other bit too about Corlys that I don't think, Rhaenys calls it out a little bit here, but he has how proudful he is, and I think that ties into with his feelings about his son and the way his son, was behaving at the funeral. This refusal to cut his losses and run has a lot to do with his pride. And,
Yep.
a lot of times I mean, I know the Bible says differently, but it's been my experience with people who are successful, they just out here living on pride.
Mm-hmm.
It usually does seem to work for people.
It does indeed.
I never managed to figure out how to make it work for me, but what I've seen other people accomplish with it is very impressive.
So after that conversation, we have Rhaenyra taking a walk with Daemon. And this is when we find out once again in dialogue, because it is not shown, that she and Lenore tried to conceive a couple times.
Yeah, I really appreciated that they added this. I don't necessarily feel like I needed to see it, but I feel like I should have known this a little bit earlier.
Agree. Fully agree.
Like they could have had some of this in the last episode.
Yep. And she is saying to him that there was no joy in it, and I found my desires elsewhere, or I quenched my whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I heard Sir Harwin was quite devoted to you." And he says it with this sort of grin, like he's trying to rib her a little bit, but she responds really sadly, because I keep forgetting this guy just died,
Yeah.
And I think this is also like, because you and I were saying that chemistry between them felt totally non-existent, I have to be reminded that she just lost somebody that was like kind of a love of hers.
Yeah, right. Like I keep forgetting that as well.
Yeah.
That it wasn't just like, even when we talk, on and on about these fucking kids, I also like, I'm so focused on the fact of the kids are not Laeners that I often forget that like the father had a name. Like who their actual father is almost inconsequential.
And like, I'm really sort of not sure if that she loved him or not. She says that he was devoted and I trusted him. Mm-hmm. That's really the most we get. So I don't know if there was anything really like. It's hard to say. I don't know, but it's certainly not something that's at the top of my mind ever, that she's also grieving, you know?
I mean, they were together for, they had 3 children over a 10-year period. So you have to, I guess, imagine that their relationship was, significant. Mm-hmm. She asked Daemon about his marriage and were they happy? And he just says that we were happy enough, which is, I guess that's the most you're going to get from Daemon. Like, I don't know. I mean, I asked in the group, and Austin shared that by the limited accounts that are in the book, it's that Daemon and Laena, had a happy marriage and that he was in love with her and loved his girls. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're just not getting any of that on the show. And I wonder if the writers just decided it would be harder for us to move forward with the storyline of Rhaenyra and Daemon marrying so quickly if we were so sure of like Rhaenyra and how in love she was with Harwin and Daemon and Laena, then it would be weird. Like, oh, y'all getting, we just buried them on Saturday and y'all getting married on Tuesday.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe they downplayed both of those relationships so that the audience could like move easier into this bit of the story. I don't know.
I kind of think so, because it seems really clear that this is being written in such a way that we're supposed to sort of be very solidly on Rhaenyra's side with things. But it is sort of weird to me that they would pair her up with somebody that they've made more of a villain, just like, than he was originally, while rooting for Rhaenyra. I don't know if it's supposed to be that we're meant to think, girl, what are you doing? But it doesn't seem like that. It's treated very much as like sort of a victory that she's finally able to be with the man that she wanted to be, her uncle. Yeah,
that's how it felt like, this is supposed to be like everything else was just prologue. The relationships that she had, the marriage that she had, same with him and his 2 marriages, all that was really not anything.
Yeah.
And they don't become fully who they are to be until they're together.
Yeah.
Which okay. All right, if that's what we're doing, that's what we're doing. It's fine. But yeah, it really does seem like they had to kind of hand wave both of their, like, even this moment when they are talking together on the beach and they're sharing this grief in much the same way that Viserys tried to connect with Daemon around this grief, but Daemon just wasn't having it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They go immediately from being like sharing grief to fucking on the beach.
Indeed. Just
all out in the open. I mean, they were under some little weird shipwreckage thing. And I wasn't really sure what it was they were in, but it was entirely too out in the open for my liking. These people are so fucking messy.
They are so messy.
This whole family is a mess.
And I really was so uncomfortable with him being like, I spared you. You were a child. And I'm like, yeah, sir, she was. And I find it even grosser that you're just willing to admit that now. Like, is that what I'm supposed to think stopped him? That he was like starting this whole thing and then stopped realizing that she was a child and that this wasn't okay? Like,
I guess
that wasn't what I was getting from the scene. But maybe? I don't know. But regardless, yeah, she accuses him of abandoning her. And he's like, oh, I really don't see it that way.
She's just like, look what happened to me when you left. I was just like, just look at what happened to my life. And is it really fair to put that on him?
Right? Like, you didn't have to do any of the...
Right, but then he counters her argument with, you think yours is a mess, look at mine. And
but everybody, like... Okay, you know what? I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but let's just get to the whole... I want you to fuck me, so let's do this now. I'm not a child anymore. And they fuck. And honestly, all I could think was that it looked really cold. Like, it just looks so cold because
fucking
of the way they
on the
decided
beach
to filter it.
It's not
It's
hardly,
not it.
It's never it. And now it's dark. It looks chilly and breezy as fuck. And all damp and shit. Yeah, no thank you.
And then we go to fucking Aemond. And he is he seeing them fucking?
I thought at first he was too when I couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
But no, he's out on the beach completely focused on something different. Yeah.
So yeah, we see him running down, and like we said, there's just kind of too much time spent on this whole thing.
It is. It's entirely too much time. And there is a bit of music that's like very triumphant music when he finally is like having the ride and everything. And you know what? I guess there's also like people are, I don't want to say people, but there's this thing with Aemon where an episode ago he was being bullied by his older brother and his cousins because he doesn't have a dragon. We know that he's obsessed with dragons. Alicent literally yells that at him. You know, he's always in the, the dragon pit area or whatever, So we see Aemon throughout this episode be really distracted by the dragon roars a couple of times as people are milling about, at the funeral. So they give us this really in-depth kind of adventure story of him seeking out Vhagar, commanding it, and then successfully riding it. When I was on my couch praying for him to just get whipped off like fleas.
Burned
and I thought that the show was going to do that because in my mind, he's the second born son. So he's... Do we really need him?
And he's literally hanging on.
Right. Like, at one point, yeah, he really is. Like, and so I thought that was going to happen. And then when it didn't, I was so salty about it, y'all. I'm sorry. I don't mean to lie. I don't want to harp. It wasn't that the episode's bad. It's just that I don't particularly care for this part of the story. And then the change in his personality is so quick.
Yeah.
And I guess if I'm supposed to believe that he has been like feeling powerless because he doesn't have a dragon, And then the exhilaration of claiming one and riding one and conquering that, you know, he really does come in smelling like a grown man, you know.
I do not care for that being phrased this way, but all right.
But and it's so fucking, it's just so quick, you know, the way he comes in, when he comes in with his cousins and they confront him, because the girls see him abscond with their mother's dragon.
Yeah.
And it's really upsetting for them. And another thing, like, Laena got this dragon when she was 15, right? So her girls grew up with this dragon being like part of their family. Yeah. It being their mothers. You know, that is a real significant bond. And I'm not necessarily saying that Laena's daughters, you know, were going to inherit the dragon, because I don't know if that doesn't necessarily work that way, right? But the way he just slides in the middle of the night,
yep,
I don't like it. I don't fucking like it. And he was supposed to be in bed. I don't like it. And then the fact that he wins, I don't want anybody that's green to really win at anything ever, so I'm gonna be mad about it, because now they got this big ass dragon on their side, and I just I was disgusted.
Yep. Agreed. So yeah, as you say, he lands, they're like, what the fuck? That was our mom's. And he's basically like, if you weren't so busy being big babies crying about your dead mom and decided to go get this dragon, maybe I wouldn't have got it. And I'm like, good Lord, you're a little fucking monster.
Yeah, yeah.
And this results in a big fight, at which point one of the boys of Rhaenyra's draws a knife and slashes him in the face.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and listen, when that little girl, I don't know if it was Bella or Raina, but one of them like goes to push and he pushes her down, and then the other sister comes and punches him right in the face, and I was like, goddamn right.
Yep. He's standing over one of the boys with a rock, like he is going to beat his head in. So this is the thing that really got to me, is later on in the moment of explanation of everything that happened, none of them really says that about the situation. The fact that he looked like he was about to murder one of them. Yeah,
one of the kids says it. But when it happens, when you get to the sea, I'm behind. He's still right as fucking dragon on mine. But when that moment happens, when he says, "Oh, he was going to kill Jace or Luke," I forget who's. I think Jacaerys is the older one, and then it's Lucerys. But anyway, it's when all the kids are yelling at once.
Okay, that's what it is.
But yeah, because somebody says right out, he had a rock. He was going to, bash his head and he was going to kill him. And then it's like, I was not, and But,
So what we have here is a huge spectacle of basically everybody from the family in the room. There's a lot of people
all
here.
In their jammies. Now that was my other question. There are a lot of fucking people here, when really it only needed to be the parents of each of these sets of kids.
Yes.
And maybe like a couple of, Kingsguard or whatever for good measure. But the whole House Valerian is up and out. All these people in the background who we don't know, but we can tell by their hair and the way they're dressed, who they are. Why are y'all here? This is family business. And then this whole scene was a mess. I wanted to punch Kristen in the face like 8 times. I really don't.
Okay, so first we've got Alicent flipping out about her kid's eye. And Rhaenyra countering with, they called them bastards, and that's treason, and I want to know where the fuck they heard that. And she pushes until eventually Viserys gets first right up in Aemon's face, who's like looking at his brother, and then he goes up to Aegon, and Aegon just is like, nobody told me. Everybody knows. Look at them.
Yeah.
And Viserys tries to be like, this is an unfortunate incident. Nobody ever better say this shit again because I will cut their tongue out, but we are leaving it. And then Alicent pipes up with, I want her son's eye.
Yeah.
She goes right off the goddamn rails. I can't get over how many people there are in this room. I'm looking. We got the 3 guards off to one side. We got all the Valerians sort of lined up in front. And then we have got, I'm looking like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, at least 15 people whose names I do not know in this room. It's way too many people. There is no need for this. It's absurd.
Yeah. I don't know. It first, because the thing too, like, this all happened with the kids, and because there were no grown-ups were around, you know, and the kid, and when Viserys is like, how the fuck did this happen? One of them, I think it's Kristen, is just like, yeah, we aren't really used to like guarding princes against other princes, you know. That's not where our focus usually is. And as my God, Kristen's face when the rumor comes out when fucking Rhaenyra is like, they called my kids like an ugly, you know, word or whatever. And he has this smirk on his face. Of
course he does.
And then again, when Aegon just comes right out and it's like, everybody knows, again, this dissatisfaction on Kristen's face is even more than what's on Alicent's face, because Alicent's face also has a lot of fear.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but Kristen doesn't even have any fear. He's just like, you know, just really enjoying this in a way that is so gross.
Yep. Yeah. There's like Kristen, you know, I really like took his part in the scene where Rhaenyra basically forces him to sleep with her. And I really felt very strongly about the position that he was in and how gross this was to me. And I stand by that this was not something that he wanted, yada, yada, yada. But there really does come a point where I'm like, sir, move on. Just get over it. Stop it. You are the Queen's Guard now. You got to step up somehow. Like, you managed to get out of it in such a way that you should never have done. And you don't seem a bit relieved or grateful for it.
No.
You're just dwelling on this thing. Get over it.
And he's feeding on the same bitterness and resentment that feeds Alicent. So they are just poisoning each other, you know. But it's unfortunate because, and I guess this is going to change too for Alicent, especially now that Otto is back. You know, she was clearly sort of desperate for people that she could trust and for allies, which is why Kristen, you know, and his devotion to her is so important. But they're not equals. Her and Kristen are not equals, and they don't have the same skin in the game. You know, like, he is really just a, you know, servant isn't really the right word, but I want to. But
I mean, he is,
you know, and what Alicent is dealing with, you know, these are her children that are at stake. This is their lives that are at stake, you know, and Kristen Cole is just like here to watch, you know, Rhaenyra burn and doesn't really care, you know, what it costs to make that happen.
So, yeah, this is when Viserys is like, what would you have me do? And she says there's a debt to be paid. And you see his face as he realizes what it is that she is asking of him. And he's just having a moment of like, oh, okay, bitch, you have really lost your goddamn mind now. Yeah.
She tells Cole to bring me the eye of Jacaerys. And he, like, I thought he was going to just jump.
I kind of thought he would too. I was a little bit surprised that he's like, but I'm sworn to protect you.
Yeah, right.
Not to do this shit.
The camera goes to Harold first, even though she's talking to Cole. And I thought that the camera cuts to Harold. And then I thought, like, Kristen is looking like, oh, shit, you calling me? What? What? And there's a moment where his eyes kind of do like a panic sort of thing. And she's screaming like, you know, you're sworn to me. And Harold just looks up and I'm pretty sure he gives Cole a look, but it's, you know.
Yeah.
And then Cole is like, yeah. I'm sworn as your protector, not your fucking guard dog, you know. Or to be sick on guard dog. Yeah, but to be sick on people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Dog.
Attack dog, yeah. And then the camera cuts right back to Harold again after Cole says, like, yeah, I'm not doing it. So, but then when she snatches the knife out of Viserys's belt.
She has to snatch the fucking, like, significant knife, too. They gotta get this knife in every fucking episode.
It was, like, with the fire behind it, so you could barely see, like, like, oh, remember that? Remember the prophecy we told you was on the knife? This is what we were talking about, y'all. Get it? Get it?
Everybody just chill out. Nobody cares about the fucking prophecy. So, yeah, she goes at him. Rhaenyra holds Alicent back and says, you have gone too far.
Kristen is on his way, and Daemon is just like, yeah, you're not going anywhere, son. I'm not going to hit you, but you're definitely not moving anywhere. You're going to stay right the fuck where you are, my friend. And I can't wait for Daemon to kill him.
So you're banking on that.
I mean, I don't have a lot of hopes for the show. It can pretty much do whatever it wants to do, but I do hope that Daemon kills Sir Criston Cole.
Okay. Yeah, he just holds him there and just says no. But yeah, Rhaenyra says, you've gone too far. And Alicent says, what have I done but what was expected of me? Forever upholding the kingdom, the family, the law. While you flout all to do as you please, where is duty? Where is sacrifice? It is trampled under your pretty foot again. And now you take my son's eye, and even to that you feel entitled. And Rhaenyra says, it was exhausting, wasn't it? Hiding beneath the cloak of your own righteousness. Now they see you as you truly are. And this is one of those moments where I'm just like, because she sort of shoves Alicent away, and Alicent has cut her on the arm, which is a big moment of everybody realizing that she actually, like, cut the future queen, which could really fuck her whole life up if they wanted to handle it that way. And she drops the knife. So this was something that I talked about last episode, I think, about how I was really feeling Alicent's POV on this, because I am a rule follower, and I understood her feelings of, I am doing everything I am told to do the way I'm supposed to do it, and you can just do whatever, and because of who your daddy is, you can get away with it. And there was a whole conversation on Facebook yesterday, and I won't get into, like, all of it, but I was shocked at the interpretations I was seeing from other people, because it is very much anti-Alicent sentiment out there. They hate this bitch. Hate her. And in this episode, with her basically being like, cut this child's eye out of his head, I'm with you all. She lost her goddamn mind and made a complete fucking fool of herself, and just ruined any chance of regaining, I think, her position of being seen as the level-headed, the one who's actually the traditionalist, upholding what is seen as decent and right.
Right. She's lost credibility.
However, what folks were arguing, and this was the primary argument, was that Alicent chose to be in the position she is, and that she is just bitter at Rhaenyra for not living the same sad life she's been forced to live, because she was banking on having certain privileges as queen that she doesn't feel she's gotten. And she chased the king and was determined to be queen, and it didn't work out like she expected, and now she's placing all of that bitterness on Rhaenyra. And I just don't see that at all.
Yeah, it's a take.
I just really
it's not a good one, but
there was somebody who literally said you could see the moment of pleasure when Viserys announced he was marrying her instead of Laena. And I wanted to grab a still of that moment and fucking post it in the comments, because she looked mortified when he said that. There was no indication. Every time that her father sent her to be with him, it seemed so clear she didn't want to go. She didn't want to do this, but she was raised to obey her father. And every time in this conversation in which I was engaging with multiple people who were acting like she was some kind of like social climber gold digger, every time I asked, what else could she have done? Nobody had an answer for me. She didn't have other offers. She didn't have other men. She didn't have her father setting up any alternative. She was told to go after the king, and she was in a castle that seemed to have just her, Rhaenyra, and the king and Otto in it, and fucking nobody else, because they don't have her have any like ladies' maids or anything. There is literally no other choice for her unless she just wants to flee the city.
Right.
And just live as a beggar somewhere.
If she just wants to go off and sell oranges with Sir Kristen Cole.
Exactly. Which he offered to Rhaenyra. Nobody's offering that to fucking Alicent.
Yeah. Like I told you when we talked about it, I have there's a lot of framing of and this is the show did this as well, and they did it in their press and they do it in the episodes, or they're very, very aware that they are trying to tell a story about these women in a like hyper patriarch,
Mm-hmm.
And we have been, I think, as viewers, primed to be very sympathetic to Rhaenyra, which is why you often hear people say things like, if she were a man, no one would be looking twice at these illegitimate children,
Mm-hmm.
and if she were a son, getting the throne wouldn't be this big deal, and blah, 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 blah. But I haven't seen a lot of consideration for what someone like Alicent and how they function,
Mm-hmm.
and what they have to do to survive under the same patriarchy that we are low-key, patting Rhaenyra on the back for sticking her middle finger up at it.
Yep.
There hasn't been a lot of compassion. And no, I do not like Alicent. I am not rooting for her, even though I think that she probably ultimately prevails, but I don't like it. But yeah, there isn't a lot of talk about, people are falling into the same trap of misogyny when they talk about Alicent, being a social climber and a gold digger. We haven't gotten, I don't think we saw any indication of any of those things in those early episodes when she was a kid.
Nope. I don't see it. Like, people are seeing pleasure on her face in a scene where I'm just genuinely I don't know what kind of, it is such a fundamental misreading of some of the basics of her personality to me that I can't argue with the rest of their assertions, because I took that as a given and they don't see it. So
yeah, no. And the other thing too, I think which is, I'm trying to think of how to explain it, but like, so we have seen from the Game of Thrones world, we have seen a really ambitious woman. We got a very dynamic character in Cersei Lannister on screen. You couldn't take your eyes off of her. People loved her. She was exciting. They couldn't wait to see what she was going to do next, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like this sort of expectation that all the queens in this universe are going to function like Cersei in some manner, right? So I don't think that we have given enough room for the idea that, like, not every woman in this universe who marries a king was necessarily plotting to be queen from when she first, became of age. Like, even Sansa, when we met Sansa, all she did was have daydreams about being a princess and then marrying the king. You know what I mean? So it's almost like subconsciously we have decided that the women in this world that Martin has created all want this. And they all want to be queen. Like, who wouldn't want to be queen, And that is a motivation for every, like, highborn woman. The other thing, too, and I don't know how important this is, but I saw, I don't know if it was in one of Austin notes or not, but apparently, I guess, in the book, Alicent also took care of King Jaehaerys.
Yeah, I mentioned this.
Did you mention that to me?
Mm-hmm. And that Mushroom asserts that maybe she was doing more than just reading to him.
Right. So I don't know, like that. That sounds like, and I know you tried to explain to me that the Mushroom was like the most like tabloidy of all the like,
salacious. Yes.
So I don't know if maybe that's supposed to be a thing. Like, oh, she's been trying to wrap herself, wrap a king around her finger. Like she tried it with Jaehaerys, but he died before she could do it. So now she had an opportunity with Viserys. So I don't know if people are bringing that into how they view Alicent. I
think that Mushroom saying that was a symptom of the exact same attitude that people are having with Alicent now, which is just, oh, she always has been ambitious because she probably has been. Not that she was sent to read to Jaehaerys because that was like her position and expected of her. It was just her fucking scheming.
Mm.
And I don't necessarily think there's any evidence to support it whatsoever, more than just, I want to paint her as being somebody who is shady from the start.
Yeah, I don't think that the show gave us anything. Like I said, I don't know what the other accounts are in the book, but I don't think the show has ever once tried to suggest to us that she had these plans, her whole life. And also the show made it a point to show us that her father is the one who was pulling her strings.
Mm-hmm. I thought we all knew that. Again.
But yet people are, nobody likes Otto either, don't get me wrong, but they're holding Alicent really, really culpable for something that she wasn't the one that was doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which I thought that this monologue here made it really clear what we're supposed to be taking away, which is the fact that she's felt like she's always done as she was supposed to do and never got any freedom out of it at all. And everybody's acting like she's just whining. Like she put herself here and now. She didn't put herself, she was placed here. She wasn't even asked about marrying the king. He announces it without talking to her or her father or anybody first.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the whole point that we were supposed to be getting was how little control any woman has over their lives unless they decide to do what Rhaenyra is doing. And only some women get the privilege of doing what Rhaenyra does. Because in that same comment thread, somebody was like, well, if she wanted to, she could go off and fuck Kristen if she wanted to. And I'm like, one, no, she couldn't. If she bore bastards, she could be executed for that. The queen bearing bastard children is not something that she could ever, and she knows that. That's part of the point.
Now I disagree. I think that she could have a life for herself if she was interested in building it. However, she would have to be much, much, much more careful than even Rhaenyra has to be, because of the consequences if she gets caught. But because the universe has already introduced us to someone, who manages that.
When Cersei manages that, her entire family owns King's Landing because of all of the money the crown has had to borrow. Cersei's position is totally different. When this is all beginning, her fucking father isn't even hand anymore. She's got nobody. Cersei's father is out here running the army. Her brother is like the star of the show. Her other brother becomes hand eventually, and they are the ones who have all the money. And the Lannisters are half the fucking household. It's even mentioned, I think, by Ned at one point, how there's golden heads everywhere because the Lannisters are just fucking running shit. Alicent is not in that position. Cersei manages to get away with stuff because she's got so many advantages, and like it's not without its own repercussions. She's getting away with it to a point, but people are starting to like circulate a lot of rumors, and it's not like it doesn't ever catch up with her at all, because it does.
Well, yeah, she's happened to have like terrible. That's the other thing that just seems to run in this series of just like awful children. And then Cersei's kids end up dying before they become the liability that they eventually would have become.
Well, I'm talking about Cersei being forced to do that like walk of shame, which was like a direct result of incest, and it wasn't even with her brother. It was about her cousin, I think. But nevertheless, it's like a huge public humiliation that is seen as like a kind alternative to execution. So acting like Cersei just got away with it is absolute bullshit. It's horseshit from start to finish. And Alicent, secondly, my point was, doesn't want to fuck Kristen. Like, if she does, okay, fine. But I don't get the impression that she's over here just like, I want to do all of these things, and I just would never be. It's more like I'm doing what I am told because I have been taught to want to do my duty. And I cannot understand how you have no respect for that at all. And everything is still like coming up roses for you all the time.
Yeah.
Like if she wants to fuck Kristen, I would like to see that. I would like to see a sort of like sexual tension between them, but I never see that. It doesn't feel like the relationship that they have, to me at least.
Yeah, doesn't seem like he has any interest in fucking her, and she doesn't have any interest in fucking him.
No, it feels like their bond is solely about hating Rhaenyra.
I think the other part, though, about Alicent, which, you know, makes me, I can only be but so sympathetic, or my sympathy only extends up to a point, is that she's doing that thing that people do where they, at some point, you know, she's had no choice in a lot of ways. And the places where she does have a choice, she continues to like wear her suffering as like a badge. And resents not just Rhaenyra. Well, clearly Rhaenyra is like the focal point, but my feelings about her on the show is how she views basically the world itself, the way the world is set up, and how she thinks the world should function. She is wearing her sack. She's a martyr. I don't like martyrs. And she's doing that thing that martyrs do, where they lord their sacrifices over other people. Because it makes them feel morally superior and gives them like the high road. And that is a deeply, you know, I don't care for that in real life or on TV.
Yeah, agreed.
But and this is what's so complicated about someone like Alicent, is because she didn't have to end up fully embracing her role as a martyr. But to your point, what other things could she have done? Right? So then it becomes a question of, all right, well, maybe she couldn't gotten away with fucking whoever she wanted to fuck. If there is, in fact, even anybody out there that she wants to fuck. It doesn't look like she wants to fuck Viserys. And we haven't seen an introduction of anyone else on the show that could even possibly, you know, feel like, oh, there's some heat there. So when I say Alicent had choices, those choices didn't show up until she was an adult.
Yes.
And they weren't even great choices, you know. But she, at some point, made a decision to really lean into how she martyred herself for the good of the realm and for duty and for honor. And that's where she decided to like place all her bets. And I mean, that was a choice she made. You know, you didn't have to end up here.
Oh, here, absolutely not. And part of this that I get frustrated about as well is I feel like it's a really predictable thing that like we saw with Arya and Sansa, where Arya was respected and liked by people because she was just absolutely flouting every convention of what womanhood was supposed to be, and a fighter, you know, just a real scrappy type that was outspoken and boyish. And that's something that we reward. Whereas Sansa was very girly and traditional and had absorbed the lessons of what womanhood was supposed to be quite deeply and had to learn how to function in a world using those tools, which we do not have respect for. And that's kind of what I see with Rhaenyra and Alicent as well. Alicent was the girl who did what she was told and had an expectation that there would be, if you didn't do this, that the world would treat you a certain way. And she is watching somebody who is embodying a lot of the behavior that people have said if she were a guy, nobody would care. With Rhaenyra just deciding to do what she wants. And again, it's true. If she were a guy, nobody would care. Except for if she were trying to pass off bastard children as heirs. People would have an issue with that. She would have to already be like king and be doing something pretty intense with that. Mm-hmm. She could do it. It would be tense, you know? But I feel like they also changed Rhaenyra's personality a tiny bit in the show where they made her anti-marriage and she was not in the original text. She was like a bit disdainful of some of the choices that were presented to her, but she wasn't just, I don't want to do any of the things women are supposed to do. And it feels like the show really wants to set up this like dichotomy that no, she wanted freedom, but she still wanted to get married. She still wanted to have children. That wasn't something that she was like rebelling against inherently. And I feel like they want that to be the only type of woman that wins and that we like, you know, the one that we root for. It just feels like they don't know how to write somebody who is a woman within the role of womanhood as accepted and is good at like handling those expectations, unless she's a side character who we don't see often because they don't want to like go into that too much. Like Rhaenys could have been great for that, but we really don't get to see much of her because she's sort of taken out of the main play at this point. And we got a bit of that with Marjorie.
I was just going to bring,
Marjorie, we know how that goes.
Yeah.
So I just get frustrated at this, like, sort of, it feels like they're pitting one type of woman against another type of woman. And unless she's exhibiting more masculine behavior, she isn't seen as sympathetic.
Well, it's not even just, in my opinion, it's not even just that they're not seen as sympathetic, but there is, I mean, we don't really, for all the lies that we tell ourselves and each other, we really don't like women. Mm-hmm. We don't value any of the things that we ascribe to womanhood in any real way. And there's this sort of, the other thing that they do with like these hyper female characters is it's about the suffering, you know, and for television entertainment, you don't want the suffering. You want the fun. You want, you know, who's out there kicking ass and riding dragons and, you know what I mean? And living life. And you don't want to, you know, like the rest of it is not as entertaining. It's not as much fun. It's you know, boring and also uncomfortable, I think, really. And people don't want to be uncomfortable. So we will reject those bits of womanhood. You know, we won't admit that that's what we're doing. You know, we'll instead say, oh, well, I like this character better because she's bucking the system, you know. I like her better because she's more fun to watch. You know, she kicks ass, whatever it is that we say. But really what we're saying is, I like this character better because she's not embodying these very sort of stereotypes, but these very sort of typical attributes that we ascribe to womanhood. We don't like women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
And fucking Otto. He has never been prouder of his daughter. I think the last time he was as proud is when she actually, Viserys actually married her. I don't think he's been as proud since that day.
Yeah, true. So this is when fucking Aemon stands up and says, "Don't mourn me, mother. It was a fair exchange. I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon."
Fucking Otto's face is like, word?
He is fucked up. He has got stitches going all the way from his hairline to like his ear. It is quite a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, and Otto seems so proud of not just that Aemon got the dragon, but that he understands that the value of what he lost versus what he gains.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that it's not even close. And I just feel like if there was like one of those little video game meters over Otto's head, it would be like all the way up to 100. Like that's how excited and like happy he is when he's looking at his grandson Aemon versus the disgust he had when he was dealing with Aegon just a little bit earlier the same night.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, it's like his whole face is just like, oh, we might have a shot.
The fucking whole way he carries himself is, I mean, I just really have to imagine if his daughter was like, "I sort of got that guy murdered so you could come back," he would be like, "Good girl."
He absolutely would.
He would be so proud.
Would. He tells her in this moment, because she's all just like, I embarrassed myself. I embarrassed our name. I embarrassed our house. Like, this was just not a good show for me. And he's like, I have been waiting for this. I didn't even know you had it in you. Which is such a weird thing to say, because what she shows in this moment, or that moment she had in front of everybody with Rhaenyra, that is not the type of person you bully into marrying somebody they don't want to marry.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when she has this sort of, this explosion and acts out of character and is willing to fucking cut a bitch and take a child's eye out, he is like, I have been waiting all this time for you to show up. And I really was like, have you been though? Because if this is how your daughter had been all this time, would you have been able to run her the way you did? Have you really been waiting for her?
I think he's telling the truth in a way, and that really what it is, my God. We'll be right back. Okay, now we're back. I think what he was trying to say was, I wish I hadn't had to put you in the king's way. I wish you would have put yourself in the king's way. I wish you would have seen what you should have done, and I didn't have to hold you by the hand and make you do it. Because you were in the damn castle with a wifeless king and you were a beautiful teenager. Come on, it was right there. So I think it's less like the control and more just, I want you to understand what the fuck we're trying to do here, and it feels like you're finally getting it.
Yeah. Especially too, because I feel like if we're being fair, he's speaking directly to the moments when he had tried to warn her about Rhaenyra and what how she would never be safe, her children would never be safe as long as Rhaenyra was alive, right? And Alicent simply was not trying to hear that information. So I think he's really talking about now you see what we're up against, and now I see that you're actually willing to do something about it. And when she talks about how ugly it is, he's just like, yeah, well, it's a very ugly game that we're playing. And you're right. He has been waiting for her to show up to play this game with him.
I really feel like, again, in this dialogue, it is proving she did not want to go to the king. But okay, sure. She was a scheming wench. It's fine. So then the next scene we go to is Rhaenyra getting stitches, which I will skip right over because ew. And she is talking to Laenor, who has come in late fucking what happened? And I'm like, good God, dude, you are really not with it at all.
When they are at the fucking crisis moment with the whole family and someone asks where he is, and Rhaenyra has to be like, well, I wasn't in bed because I couldn't sleep. And fucking Alice says, like, I'm sure he's entertaining one of his young squires. Like, again, that's right out in front of God and everybody. What are we doing?
Just entertaining. I just meant he was pouring in some wine and they were talking about jousting.
Oh my
God. Jousting is not a euphemism for anything. And he says, I should have been there. And she says, those should be our house words, which is a pretty good line, actually.
Do you remember Jill Goth, like, bound? I forget her. You know what I'm talking about? She made a meme of it was like a house sigil with those words on it.
Oh, that's pretty good. And she had been saying, Rhaenyra, earlier to Daemon, basically, he has been very little help mostly, and now he's going to be completely useless. And he essentially comes in and says, I have sucked and I have not done anything worth doing. But
he's willing to, like, change it all. He says, starting today, I am going to be the husband that you need by your side and the father to these boys that they need, so that we can be united as we get ready for you to take the throne, because it's about to, like, get real.
Yep. He's saying, I do love the boys. And all of, again, I just wish we got more time with that, because I don't think he does. I don't see it. I believe that it's meant to be true when he says this, but I don't see any of it. And he says that I just am really angry at God for making me the way that I am. And she says, I am not. You're a good man, and there are very few of them. And, like, you have a good heart. But obviously, all his good intentions, like, so much of this damage is already done. I don't really know what he was wanting to do. What we find out fairly quickly, we have a short scene with Alicent in the carriage with Viserys. A moment later, he looks like shit.
Yeah,
obviously,
he looks
this
so
journey
bad.
is really, like, rough on him. They need to have, like, a full-on bed in there, because it's just sort of a bench. And then he needs to put his feet up. He's sliding around. Like,
she's trying to, like, dote on him, and he's just, like, really not here for it. She tries to open up a conversation. He's just like, yeah, no, we're not. I know. I don't know. I don't want to talk to you right now.
She has this gorgeous, like, green and gold cloak with fur trim, and I'm just obsessed with it. Ugh. So then we have the scene with Rhaenyra talking to Daemon.
Oh, I want to mention real quick when she's talking to Laena, and after she says, you're an honorable man and all that, they talk briefly about how she really did want to have children. Like, I wanted to bear your children.
Yeah.
Like, that was part of the plan that we were going to do. And she's expressing, like, sadness and regret that didn't really happen for them. And I was really glad to see that.
Yeah.
Because I was curious, when we met them last episode, and, it had been 10 years. It was a weird episode altogether, and I just didn't know, like, who these people were to each other. And this episode did a lot of filling in the blanks, which is unfortunate that they just didn't include it in the actual fucking episode.
Agreed.
But they did try to, like, flesh some things out in this one, and I like this little moment between the two of them. I really, really appreciated that. Yeah.
So she's talking to Daemon, and she's basically like, look, we should just get married. And Damon's like, yo, you're married already. And she's like, yeah, about that. And he's like, he's still alive. And she's like, yeah, about that. And he gives her this look, and clearly is a little bit sort of shocked at what it feels she is suggesting here. And we cut from them to fucking Laris. It's such a shame what happened. A perversion of justice. He was defiled. An outrage. I really hate him so much. Why are you here, sir? The hand is gone. What do you do?
Yeah, I'm really like he came all the way out this way for the funeral. I thought that was interesting, but maybe he's on the council now. On a small council. I don't know. I don't recognize any other faces from King's Landing that made the trip. So I'm not really sure why the Lord of Harrenhal is, accompanying the king and queen to this funeral.
Yeah.
And also actually riding with them. I don't know. Yeah. But that shot is the ship is sailing with the 3 dragons going home. Mm-hmm. That was a dope shot. But I guess we have when Laena leaves, he leaves a dragon.
Yeah.
So I wonder if one of the girls will get sea smoke.
Real quick though, this scene with Laris, he says to her, "If you want an eye, just say the word," basically. And I was just like, what would that look like? I mean, it's one thing to kill your own like father and brother with some just randoms, but how would you set up taking the eyes of one of the princes? How would you do it? I just want to know what, I mean, I have no doubt he could figure it out, but I just really do. Also, if he did, everybody would think it was Allison. Like, there's just no way to not think that because it'd be too specific. I don't know. Anyway. So yeah. We then...
I just like that she says, that won't be necessary.
Yeah. But your devotion is noted. And the look she gives him, she's clearly very afraid of this guy. Like, she needed an ally of some kind, and she just got a lot more than she bargained for. And she can utilize him if she decides to be smart about it. But he is going to outplay her at least the first couple tries, probably, because he seems much better at this than she does, and she's just starting to get her feet under her.
I hope at least with her father there, she gets a little bit of guidance, because I definitely don't think that, like, if she is going to be playing this game, I want to see her playing the game. I don't really, like I said last time with him, I'm not really interested in this sort of interloper who's just using her to, advance his own agenda. I get that that's a real thing, and by helping the queen, you're making a very powerful ally that can serve you later down the road. But I want her to be calling some of these shots. I'm not interested in watching the show where it's Otto and Laris, being the tacticians for the Greens, and Allison is just what the sad sack, embittered, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not really here for that. So I hope that's not where it's going.
That's fair. So then we go to Damon with his fucking murder hoodie on, and he is approaching Sir Carl. And in the book, Sir Carl actually murders Laenor in a very public place. And they take his body home. He's like stabbed to death in a market square or something. And Sir Carl manages to get away and just disappears. Nobody ever finds him.
Oh, wow.
And it's very much speculated that somebody was behind this, and most people think it was probably Damon. But there is no doubt that Laenor is actually dead. And I was dreading that. And this was the high point for me of this episode, is that they don't do it that way. And I was so glad. Yeah.
Yeah. This was a really nice, I can't call it it's not so much as a surprise because I didn't read the book, but it was a twist for me. Like, it's just like a regular, you think one thing's happening, but then another. And it really made sense, because I have to admit, when they're fighting in the room, you're just like, wait, what? You always look down on me. What?
Right? Just out of nowhere.
And then so you're like, okay, well, Damon has obviously paid him to, like, what we think is happening is kill him, right? Kill him in the room and specifically looking for witnesses. And then it turns out that they did in fact do that. And it was just a really nice surprise. And and we see Damon snap this guy's neck, but we don't know, yet exactly what's going on.
Poor fucking random dude.
Right? So
he just happens to be the right height, weight, and skin color.
Basically, and so like while we get this really nice happy ending for these two men, and that Laena gets to go and live a life where he is not burdened with birthright and duty and all that shit. This poor nameless guy had to make the ultimate sacrifice, And like, honest to God, nobody gave a fuck. Everybody was just like, "Oh, I love that ending." Like nobody gave a fuck about that guy getting his neck snapped.
I felt so bad for his parents. Like Rhaenys loses it, and Corlys rightfully is like, "This is my fucking hall. How did you let this happen?" Which I'm like, okay, all these servants are dead now. I have to assume like he's taking these guards out and taking their heads off. I wouldn't be mad at him for doing it either, because this is such a huge fuck up. I mean, how do you trust these guys ever again?
I mean, the whole weekend, the guards were like, none of the guards anywhere were fucking doing their job. And that
they don't ever like. There's no point to them.
It doesn't seem like it.
They don't do much.
But while this is all happening, there's the voiceover of Daemon and Rhaenyra speaking, and one of the things that they're talking about is how everyone will suspect that they did this, that either Daemon did it, or that they were in cahoots, or that Rhaenyra did it. But no one will really be able to prove it.
Yeah.
And that will lend itself to people fearing them, because nobody will be able to say for sure what they're capable of. And I think if the same would be true if Alicent ever took Larys up on that offer to get an eye.
Do you think so?
I think it'd be like, well, yeah, everybody's pretty sure Alicent was behind it, but can they prove it? And also people would be like, oh, you know what? You do not want to fuck with her because she got that eye.
That's true. That's true.
I really hope that like nobody takes any lesson. But this feels like we're in an arms race,
Oh,
and the stakes are getting raised each time, and now we have this sort of this what do you call it? This sort of like Mummer's farce of Laenor being murdered, but he really is secretly, somewhere else. And then you have Aemon getting Vhagar, and it's just like things are just, going up bit by bit by bit,
Yeah. Yeah, so it ends with the wedding between Rhaenyra and Daemon.
What the fuck kind of wedding?
I'm real curious about this, because this feels like some old god shit.
Yeah.
They weren't old god worshippers, the Targaryens.
This is clearly like some sort of Targaryen rite. Do they even have, like, it's not a sept?
No, they're
sept
in
and
some
marrying
cliffs.
him. No, but I mean, even the person marrying him, like even when you have the subtitles on, it doesn't say like Septon so and so, right? It said priest, which I've never heard them call them priests before.
I'm wondering if it's like a red R'hllor priest. There's no fire in the ceremony, though. A lot of blood.
There's a lot of blood. So, yeah, and then those poor kids.
I was just standing there watching this. Their mom just died last week.
And now they're in, like, I don't know what's in that cup. I hope it wasn't more blood, because there was a lot of blood.
Yep.
And then what were they wearing?
Yeah, it's like, it looks like rough spun dipped in blood. It's like clearly dye, but it isn't not like fine cloth of any kind.
And I'm not familiar with anything that would be like Valeria's religions. I know that some of the dragons are named after old Valerian gods, so I know that they had a religious system in place. But I don't think the show has ever taught me anything about it, so I don't know.
Yeah, same. And this is not described in detail. It's just mentioned that they get married very quickly after. And then we end it with the surprise reveal of Laenor meeting his lover out on this little rowboat, sprinting to the beach, and all of his hair has been cut off, and he is just fleeing. And like you said, he's leaving sea smoke behind. And a lot of people have questions about that, because it's one thing if he actually died. It seems like people sort of believe that there's a mystical connection between them and that the dragon would know he was dead versus just bailing on, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know if that's anything that's we've really like seen indicated. I don't recall, but I'm hopeful that like one of the poor children whose mother's dragon was stolen manages to take this.
That's what I'm hoping too. I don't know if that's how it's going to work, but I feel like we can't just have dragons that we're not using. You know what I mean? So but then I'm curious too, like we get another time jump. I'm very curious if Rhaenyra and Daemon have children. Like they can't have children, right? She would be crazy to have kids with him, right?
Why?
Because like, wouldn't that just be like proof? Because she's gonna have a white-haired kid with Daemon if she has kids.
What if she didn't?
Well, that would be something. But it just feels like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know. It just seems like a bad idea. Like, you got your 3 kids. You're standing your ground. You're not going to admit to anybody anything, and fuck them, let them wag their tongues, right? But now you're going to pop out some extra kids, and they're all going to have like that hair. And now everybody's going to be like, oh, word?
Again, though, what it comes down to is like, well, what are you going to do about it? He's not like, the dad isn't even alive to torture into saying, yeah, I fucked her. So what are you going to do?
I wonder how the other kids would feel. Like, I guess it's, it just raises like a lot of implications for like, as her children get older, they have got to like come to terms, right? With the truth of their parentage, I would think. But that's not necessarily true. Maybe they would just decide to hold on to the lie, if they decide to hold on to the lie, despite having really strong feelings that like, that's not who my father was. If they decide to hold on to the lie and then these other babies pop out looking the way they should have looked. I mean, I don't know. It just feels like it would just make things even more complicated and messy, which is probably proof that they will have additional children, because this show is all about being complicated and messy. So they are definitely having more children.
I really like the idea of her giving birth and one of the kids just yelling at the baby, "You look like what I was supposed to look like." And I feel like Rhaenys is just going to be like so validated to her husband. Fucking told you. I told you. Now both our kids are dead. Fuck you.
Yeah. I that Laena gets to go and live his best life is, wonderful, especially the show avoided the whole like, let's just kill all the gay people because they're like this, dispensable. But
disposable.
Also that. But that moment with with Rhaenys, I want her to know her son isn't really dead. And I don't think that there's a way to do that, you know? But I hate it for her that she is grieving for a child. I just hate that for her so much.
Yep. Agreed. And I have to assume they think that it's that Carl dude who did it. So poor Carl better fucking get a bit of plastic surgery done or something. He's ordinary enough looking that probably just being like, he's about this tall with brown hair is not going to track him down. But yikes, the fucking rage they must be feeling on that. I do wonder how Daemon managed to ensure all the guards were not in the room, and it was just that one poor little kid that like
Laena
shoves to the ground, and he goes and runs to get help.
Yeah, especially because we've seen throughout this episode that there's been a million. Well, a lot of people have left. I'll give them that. A lot of people have already sailed home. But there was a bunch of people in the room when the kids were fighting that were Valerian that lived there. It seems like it was very crowded the whole time. But then all of a sudden, this one room, there's like nobody in it. But it happens like in his father's his grand hall or whatever, because that's what Laena says when he comes in. It's like, what are you doing in my father's rooms? Like, so it's some place that I guess we're supposed to understand is not everybody can be up in there. You know what I mean? Like, this is not like a common room where people would just be hanging out or passing through.
Yeah. So that's also the end of the episode. We got 3 more, and that's it to the end of the season. It feels too fast. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say also?
I was just going to say the way in which Laena is killed, I thought wasn't really, like, it's a sword fight. But then by the time they get in the room, the body is completely burned. Mm-hmm. But nothing else is really on fire. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what we were supposed to think happened. But it's fine.
He got cut down and fell right toward the fire. Right into it.
Oh,
I think.
Okay.
Which is beggars belief, but I think that's what they were going for. Was just so we were fighting in front of a fire.
And then the body fell in.
Yep. It's just like the kid ran to get help. And that body was charred.
Yes, it was.
How was there enough time?
There wasn't.
Like, it doesn't really make any sense. It's fine. I just am glad that Laena's still alive. That's really all it is. I'm just going to focus on that. But yeah, this setup doesn't really actually work that well. But maybe he can smuggle Sea Smoke out and fake Sea Smoke's death with another decoy dragon that they act like burned to death. They drown him. Something. All right. Is there anything else that you want to mention about this episode before we wrap this one up?
No, ma'am.
All right. Well, real quick, I'm going to say hi to new patrons. And I also just want to remind everybody that RoShawn and I are doing the live recordings of Ted Lasso on Fridays, and Miles and I are doing the live recordings of Sookie on Mondays. We just started season 2 of Ted Lasso, and it really starts off with quite a bang. It starts off with quite a bang of a ball into a... Yeah, it's very sad. It's terrible. But I am excited to be getting into the second season. The third season, they've announced when it's coming out yet? Have they?
They have not.
They still haven't. Why?
Still haven't. Yeah.
All right.
And there's some weird articles that keep popping up for me that I refuse to read because they just very clickbaity. But it says things like, drama on the set of Ted Lasso.
Oh boy!
And I know it has to do with. I know all the stories circle back to fucking Olivia Wilde, and I'm just not interested.
Yeah, that whole thing with like, "Don't worry, darling," wasn't
that
crazy.
A mess?
What was going on there? I didn't even I never read a single article, and I still was so aware of it because it was everywhere.
It was everywhere.
I had been kind of into it based on the trailer too, and then by the time the movie came out, I had just lost interest because I was oversaturated with the news about it. It's like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, it was definitely a story that was everywhere, which was weird too because it wasn't much of a story there.
No, it wasn't. It was just kind of like the main character actress does not want to promote the movie. What's that about? It was
like a whole story, a whole news cycle based on subtweets, like, oh, what did she mean? She said hi to everybody except this one person in her Instagram live.
Can you imagine being under that kind of scrutiny?
No.
I posted recently on Facebook about being afraid to say happy birthday to somebody because I had not said happy birthday to somebody the day before. Mm-hmm. And it's like that, but actually happening. What I'm worried about isn't real. It's just my anxiety about it. But what if that were real? Oh my God. No, I could not handle it. All right. So new patrons. We have got Pavel VS, Birthday, Anders Sandom, Tommy R., Catherine Guild, Shreyansh Gupta, Colin Krause, and Meredith Layden. Welcome to all of you delightful people. Thank you all so much for becoming patrons. We love you so much. Some of you just became patrons literally today, I'm seeing from these dates. So that's pretty fun. But yeah, I hope that you guys all take advantage of the patrons only content. I am really toying with doing only one Unspooked this year because it has been so busy. I really want to do one, but I like the years I've done them, I've tried to do like 2 or 3, and I just don't see that happening. So everybody just stay tuned. I'm really going to try and get one out, but it might just be the only one, and I'll try and make it maybe a little longer or something. But there are a lot of back episodes of Unspooked if folks want to listen to those. And I also recommend the podcast Spooked, which is on Luminary, $5 a month, and you get access to like all their back episodes. And that is a really fun, spooky podcast. And I don't listen to many podcasts. So, you know, I'm sure there's other also great spooky podcasts out there, but this is one that is so incredibly like goofy at times that it really strikes a nice balance for me. Because some of these spooky things, they take themselves so seriously. And I'm just like, come on, that is... This is a truly outlandish story, and you're really acting like this is genuinely happening, and I need a little bit of lightness in here to kind of wink at me and be like, yeah, it's a bit crazy, but we're having a good time, right? So anyway, spooky season is upon us. I'm so excited about it, you guys. I love this time of year so much. We took a walk this morning. It was 61 degrees. The best. All right, everybody, we love you. Until next time. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.